Well, I just kind of noticed that there were quite a few different misconceptions about branding, really. And a few conversations even at Viva and with other people in the wellbeing industry who were kind of, well, they felt like they were struggling with their branding, basically. And just noticed a few kind of things that people were thinking about branding in a different way to how I thought about it. And for me, I love branding, but that's because, you know, I used to do it as a career, and I guess it was just interesting to me that I loved it so much and others seemed to fear it or not like it, and it just all comes back down to the way we think about it. So I guess I was chatting to Mandy and we sort of thought, well, why don't we demystify branding and help people to tap back into their own kind of authentic message and how they share that with the world, I guess. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we just thought we'd kind of have this different conversation about branding, and I know there's a few people who want the recording of it, which is why we're recording it, because I guess whatever comes up is quite useful to share with other people if there's any kind of wisdom that arrives out of it. So that's why we're recording it, to then share with the people who couldn't make it today. So yeah.
And I had my branding day with Nicole on Monday, which was fascinating actually, because you'd explained what was going to happen, but I hadn't understood what the feeling of it would be, and actually it was so useful. And since then, so much has happened. I've just changed direction in what I was planning to do, or what I thought I should be doing, and that was really interesting. The amount of shoulds that came up when you were saying stuff like, who's your target market? Oh, well, it should be la la la. And it was actually, yeah, but does it want to be? Do you want it to be?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm quite happy to talk about that experience.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that came up when people were talking to me, especially at Viva, was how do I do it right? And one of the things that I kind of wanted to share was that there is no right and wrong, I guess, even with branding, because we're very good at kind of seeing that for ourselves at times with the principles, that there's no kind of right and there's no wrong. But actually, when it then comes to applying it to our branding and our business, I guess it kind of goes out the window, because it feels like we should be doing something in a certain way. So one of the common things that came up was kind of using social media, and people, I should be on social media. And I was like, but should you though? Because, you know, who are you trying to talk to? And if they're not on social media, then you might be better, you know, if they're next door, living next door to you, then you'd be better doing an event than battling your way through social media because you hate it. So it's kind of about tapping people back into that, what's intuitively right for them and their branding. And I guess I don't know whether it's helpful to start with what branding is about and what people think branding is about.
Yeah, that'd be useful.
Yeah, because another thing, I was chatting to Ankush actually, and a couple of other people, and when they were talking about it, they were saying, you know, you brand cattle, why would you want to brand yourself? So I think Mandy said that as well, or, you know, and it was just interesting to me, because I think a lot of people see branding as unhelpful flower arranging and just making things look pretty, but actually there is kind of a strategic element to it, which is kind of like, what do you really want to be doing, and how and why will you go about it in a certain way. And I think what you were alluding to in your session, Mandy, was that it kind of helped with getting clarity. So it's kind of, for me, branding is almost the strategic element of how you're getting your message out there. Whereas marketing tactics, for example, like whether you're doing a website or whether you're writing for press, or, you know, whatever the tactics are that you want to use, so whether that be video or a podcast or, you know, anything, or social media, those to me are just marketing tactics. So that's the actual how you're going to do it, but behind that and underneath that is kind of a more strategic thing, of why you're doing it and what you really want to do with your brand and how you want to share your message and who to. I don't know if you want to share any of your experience on that Monday.
Yeah, and I was wondering, I think because I always bang on about the fact that I work with parents of teenagers, I bang on about the fact that I work in health and social care, I kind of got stuck in a bit of a groove. And although I do like doing that, I think through our conversation, I realised actually I love working with women like me of this sort of age group, women who are wanting to get creative. Maybe the kids have left home or about to leave home. And it felt like, for me, it felt like a bit of a cliche, which is why I wasn't doing it. And then through our conversation, realised that that's exactly what I love to do. I also love working with parents of teenagers, but actually the health and social care stuff, it's like, I mean, something might come my way, but actually, if I followed the feeling, that felt quite heavy. And I can have fun with that, so volunteering and that kind of thing. But it didn't need to become my work just because that was my experience. And my branding was kind of become this, friendly face, mother of the retreats, that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, that's not who I want to be. That's not who I am. So actually we tap back into actually, who am I? Does that answer what you were saying? Because I was just wondering whether it's worth asking Lesley and Julian why they're here this morning, what they're hoping to pick up, or because I can, some of my experience and your teaching of branding would probably fit in really well with that. This particularly says only the four of us. We could have a good chat maybe. Yeah.
I go first.
Yeah.
So when I was when I had a proper job, and that's probably one of the things that I need to sort of look at. But I was exposed to sort of quite a lot of branding, and towards the end of when I sort of left financial services, there was a guy I came across who had worked at different agencies in London and had set up his own branding company. And he seemed to be saying something different. So his message was basically that advertising doesn't work. Even though people are still spending millions and millions of pounds and all of the adverts, he said, but it doesn't work. And it's a bit like the three principles, that there's something other than that. And he spent a lot of time with us as a company, just really sort of hearing who we were and what it was as a group of people we wanted to achieve. And I got really excited by all of that, and sort of about 6 months later I left. It wasn't unrelated, but it suddenly sort of came to me that the group of people I was working with didn't share sort of my sort of passion and views, and I was just going to bang my head against a brick wall for the next however long I was going to stay there. But it was this guy that sort of opened it up, and as Nicole was saying, it was the why are you doing this? Because that is what gives us sort of the energy to sort of keep going, and that's what gets us out of bed and all of those things. And so I really want to sort of find out kind of more of that. And I think the other thing for me is that I want whatever I sort of put out there as the face to sound like me. And I don't sort of regard myself as a writer. It takes me ages if I've got to put something together. It's not what I'm good at. And so that's again what I'm looking for, is that it's how to sound and look authentic and be true to yourself. But at the same time realizing that I've got limited skills in some of those things. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And I want it all done in this hour.
Well, we'll do our best. Yeah. Actually, I really love that, because it's something that came up yesterday when I was chatting to someone. It's like often these branding experts will come in and kind of be like, right, actually this is how you should be doing it. And often we think, oh well, we should be presenting ourselves a certain way. But it's to me it's quite an interesting thing that you say, I want it to sound like me, because if you are just sharing authentically and speaking your truth, and sharing that, you can't really go wrong.
I hear you. Oh, you're back. Oh, you're back.
Yeah, you can't really go wrong as long as you're kind of sharing in your own voice. So it doesn't have to sound like you, it has to be you, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think it ties into the question that you feel that or the statement that you feel you're not good at it, I guess, because I guess everything's kind of unknown to us until it's not, so we never really know. So if we're trying to do something that we don't know, we're going to learn it. So and there's no right and wrong with it. So to me it's a case of kind of playing with different things and learning what works for you, in how you share it. And also, I don't really believe that you can't be good at anything. So I don't know whether that helps. Do you?
It's probably that I've got blind spots.
Yeah.
And I know that they've, like, for example, the thinking around certain aspects of it. So that's really sort of where I need sort of the help. It's to look beyond that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think we were talking this morning as well. It's not the feeling that comes with branding. Sometimes it's not dissimilar to, I don't know, speaking in public, because actually what we're talking about is making yourself visible. And with that can come a whole load of worry and fear and all that sort of stuff, and I think that's what holds a lot of people back.
Yeah. And it's like Julian, at the moment I've been filming an online series, and I've had a nightmare with it, and it's really funny because I really wanted to do it, and I've been I got in front of the camera and I just had a meltdown and it's really funny because I can do a Facebook Live no problem, but the camera was in front of me and nobody was there to listen to the other side, and I couldn't do it. And Julian was really helpful with that, actually, and shared some stuff with me on just kind of being myself in front of the camera. And so it's kind of like we're always going to have that thinking about stuff, but when you're doing it, you're just doing it, I guess. There was something you said, Julian, in one of your things that you sent me, and I can't quite remember how you said it now, but I told you I loved it the other day. Can you remember what it was?
No, because it was your insight.
Yeah, I know.
It was nothing I said, it was your insight.
Yeah, that's it. It's a shame. No, I think it was something along the lines of we're just doing. And you can't really go wrong with that.
When I make a film with somebody, I'm just trying to get the essence of them onto the film, and sometimes I guess they're not really aware of what their essence. I mean, it's so close to them, so it's like right in front of your nose, so you can't see it, and yet somebody else who's to one side can see it much more easily. And so I think that's, and then when it's described to you, you might have that denial phase, but then you kind of go, oh, actually, you might just be right. And you start seeing it, you then kind of focus on it and see it a bit more, and that's interesting. And that's also helpful because it's kind of like a relief. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense now, and then it kind of, you were talking about a whole load of pressure as you were filming. Well, that could be about the process of filming, but it could also be about something about the way you're doing it is not quite the way that you're meant to be doing it. And sometimes you've just got to give yourself some space for that wisdom to arrive, and then what I find is you just pick up the camera and you film it, without any thought about it. You just it's like, oh yeah, that sounds good, I like that. And you've got it in the can, then
exactly. And again, I think that's what comes to me when people talk about which marketing tactics should I be using, how should I be doing this, because it's kind of like, well, pick the ones that work for you. It's like the other day I wrote an article for Simple Reminders, and it just flowed from me, and I just sent it and had absolutely no thinking about it at all. And then they published it, and to me that's marketing working for me, because it's just me sharing my authentic message in the way that I love. And I think in that way, branding can just be, you know, whatever works for you. And just following that feeling of how to do it. But also what I like about the kind of branding strategy approach is that it almost allows you to dream about what you want to achieve and think about who you want to speak to, and then just putting that to the side and knowing what you hope for and what you dream about, and then allowing whatever happens to happen as well.
So my experience of 8 years now of the current branding is that it's just a tale of flotsam and jetsam, really, because I started with something, with an idea to go in a certain direction and do certain things and work with certain people, and that required some kind of collective name that meant something, I guess. And so that's how Stars of Wellbeing was born. And although we didn't do an awful lot of exploring of what it meant and how to portray it and what tactics to use, blah, 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 it was really more about a band of people getting together and each bringing their own skills and enthusiasm to the table. Yeah, which is a bit random in itself. And then somebody kind of went, well, what does this Stars of Wellbeing thing mean? And we then came up with it's what's inside that counts. There's a strap line for it, which then we created another Facebook business page, because Facebook business pages were the in thing at the time. Now not. And but that didn't really seem to, you know, we did some podcasts and stuff like that. It did what it did for a while. And then what I found was that 4 years ago, I'd kind of parted ways with all of those people at various times. And the only person left in the equation was me. So what do? You've got 250 films, all with Stars of Wellbeing logos on them. You don't kind of then change it, I don't think. Maybe you do. Maybe you can let go of it and go, well, that was Stars of Wellbeing, it was all very good, now it's just Julian Freeman, you know. And so I've got that thinking. Do I end the Stars of Wellbeing, or is it because it's, because actually I don't know whether people know Stars of Wellbeing, or I don't know whether people know Julian Freeman, or maybe it's a bit of both. I don't know.
It's a bit of both.
Yeah.
So I think there's still some value to Stars of Wellbeing and having it there. Does it have meaning? No, it's like having a flagpole at the end of your drive, you know, and sticking having a flag on it. People go, oh, that's nice. It's not really.
But out of interest, who's the, like, who's the star, I guess?
Well, that's,
who are the stars?
Well, you're the star. The person watching the film is the star. The people on the film are the stars, and the people making the film are the stars. So we are all.
So actually, I think it's perfect.
Yeah, no, it does still do. It's not as if it's like completely wrong for what I'm trying to do. So that's kind of good. It's really more. I mean, you were talking about tactics, and I find it quite interesting because I come from an internet marketing background, and we used to use lots of tactics, and the tactics were aimed at getting results, and it became a ends justifies the means kind of approach, which I don't think fits with the principles at all.
No.
I think the principles, the way I see life now, is that the flotsam and jetsam is exactly how it is. It's like a meandering journey of flow and eddies and back currents and all of it. And so at some point certain things would be relevant and at other points not. So I put out a post the other week, like I don't normally write. So this is a lovely cross between trying something and being authentic.
Yeah.
Because I had this urge to write a long post. So I put out a post saying, does anybody read long posts? Because generally speaking, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm one of those, I'll read the first few lines, and if it grabs me, I'll flick, I'll read it. And if it doesn't, and even if it grabs me, sometimes I click the more button, and then I see this huge column of stuff. I go, oh my God, I'm never going to get to the end of that. And so I did a post about if I wrote a long post, would anybody read it? Because I felt like writing a long post.
Yeah.
And people kind of went, yeah, don't worry about it. If that's what you feel like doing, do it. So I wrote the long post, and it was a little bit designed because it had like, this is the bit that will be above the more button. So let's tell people if they don't want to read anymore, then don't read anymore, or jump to the end or whatever. And then I did make sure the last couple of paragraphs was kind of like the summary of it, in a way. So I did a bit of engineering, but the rest of it was just what I felt like saying. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I have moments where I really want to write something. I really want to write. And when I'll write, 16 or 1700, I mean, I used to have lots of blog posts on my website, but they weren't, and that was another tactic, wasn't it? Get content so that Google can rank you, blah, blah, blah. I don't know that it ever will really work for me. I enjoyed writing all the pieces. And I think the pieces felt relevant to me at the time. They weren't aimed at a particular target market or that. It's just me doing my thing. So I suppose that's why I'm in the space of the branding is you. The branding is, and I didn't quite get what you meant by Ankish's comment about cattle. What did you mean by that?
It's just because, a few people have said to me about kind of, I can't remember who said it. Was it Steve Chandler or something? That said that branding is, you brand cattle, so why would you brand yourself? It's just quite interesting to me. Another
meaning, isn't it?
Sorry?
That's just another meaning for it, isn't it? But that is kind of what, it's almost like it's going to be tattooed on my forehead and I'll never be able to take it away, but I will become that.
Yeah, and I think what we saw...
But one of the things that gets to me there is, I don't know about you, but I get bombarded with these, here's your 6-figure blueprint to make a successful video production, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
That's somebody telling, now, in some cases, they may have earned 6 figures doing that. In a lot of cases, I'm guessing they never have, but they'd like to, or they're intending to with plays like this. So what they're telling you is a way that you can do it. And I've seen lots of people trying to kind of blindly follow the way, like as if I just follow these steps, the 6 figures drops out at the end of it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works.
No.
You've got to have you in there. You've got to have the content. You've got to have that's the important. If you've got that, then the 10 steps or whatever it is can help, or some of the 10 steps can help you. Brilliant.
Yeah.
But
I like how you said that. It's some of the 10 steps, it's what works for you.
Yeah. So almost, I don't want to be dismissive because Steve Chandler and Rich Litvin and all those guys are really, really successful and have made a lot of people very successful, which is fantastic. But I'm still, and maybe this is why I'm not them. I'm not as successful as them. But I feel like don't follow anybody else's way.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of my message really, is it's tapping into your own wisdom about what works for you and
It's interesting because the journey that we went on Monday, so there was a definite formula, wasn't there? You went through however many steps.
Yes.
And each step was really useful.
Questions, actually. It's more questions.
But it opened up.
Yeah.
And that's what I like. It became an inside out exercise. I wasn't looking, right, I'm going to do all of this so that I can then be this. It was like, well, it was literally, who are you? What do you want? And it stopped being, what people want to hear from me?
Yeah.
Really, I mean, it's so simple. That's the thing. We forget how simple it is. Instead of me focusing on what do people want, it was actually, what have I got to share? Because you talking about that post, Julian, I mean, that I was really drawn to that post. And I don't see you as Stars of Wellbeing. I'm really grateful for you doing Stars of Wellbeing. That's something that you did. But I see you very differently. It's almost like that was a suitcase.
But no, that's interesting. When you put it that way, the Stars of Wellbeing is like the doing. It's like the product, and I'm the producer, I suppose.
That's it. There's and you can have both brands, you know.
Yeah.
You can have a person. These days, it's quite popular to have like a brand for what you do, and then a personal brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you were saying to me to stay as Mandy Spray, and then under that, I've got other things like the Parenting Teenagers thing, Safe to Create program. So there's different things, but also because sometimes I get scared that I'll get typecast or stuck in a groove. Whereas I'm always going to be Mandy Spray. I mean, I could change my name, I suppose, but this is, you can show up in any way that makes sense at the time.
Yeah. And it evolves as well.
Exactly. You kept saying that on Monday, it evolves. Yeah. But one of the really helpful things was when you did that sort of brainstorm, what words are important to me? And we just carried on and on and on until we filled the page. And it was like words were coming out that I wouldn't have thought about. Things like dynamic has suddenly become a word I love. And I didn't even know. Do you know what I mean? It was just allowing myself to be, to show up, I suppose, in the process.
I love that. Yeah.
Well,
and it is evolving as well. So a lot of people think that, if you have a brand strategy, that's it's fixed and these are the tactics I'm going to use, and you kind of line it up for the year. And that is what a lot of people do, when they're looking at it's kind of more of an outside in way of looking at branding, but you can make it, for me, I have a brand strategy because that's what I'm dreaming about achieving, and that's who I want to speak to. I know who I want to speak to. So for me, it's like a female audience, and I like the general consumer. I want to share the principles to the general consumer, and so that will then inform how I present my brand. So it's got quite a feminine feel to it, but it still doesn't mean that it won't evolve, and then I can just update my brand strategy. But it just gives you the tools to kind of think about what is authentic for you, I guess.
So an area that I find interesting is that I've always wanted to reach out to, as you called them, the general consumers, but let me call them people who don't know about the 3 Ps right now.
Yeah.
And there are lots of different places. I mean, I was at suicide prevention training yesterday, and they have created a fantastic, well-crafted process around an outside-in understanding. So that could be a place where you could do the principles for suicide prevention, and it's probably quite a good idea right now. But and that might be a marketing tactic, right? Strategy tactic or something, whatever you want to call it. But when I filmed my films, they've been mostly watched, I would say, in the main by people inside the 3 Principles community. And when I make films that aren't specific to the 3 Principles, they don't really get watched. So I'm not achieving my now when I make those films, I'm making the films that there's a lovely one that I did with Sarah Woods called 7 Loads of Washing. And it's all about, she was in her thinking and then realised she was in her thinking, and she's out of her thinking because she's realised it. But it was done in terms of kind of everyday terms. And I thought that might get some traction, but it didn't. So it's like, well, okay, so how does that, I still haven't cracked how do I make something that is really, that appeals to the people that I'd love to appeal to. Or on the other hand, maybe I need to do something more about working with the people who are actually watching my films and what they want, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. And I guess who you're trying to reach with it as well.
I personally don't feel like there's a Sid Banks saying, I think somebody comes to him, it's on the Long Beach lectures, I think. He said, somebody comes to him and says, I want to write a book on consciousness. And Sid Banks turns around and says, that's a very short book. I mean, I'm paraphrasing that, but it's something like, in his wry Scots humour. And there is only so much principles that you can, and I think there's lots of people out there doing that. And so I don't feel like that's my place right now to tell people about the principles in that way. Mind, consciousness, and thought, and da-da-da-da. It's like Missing Link, great book. Go read it.
Oh, Julian, I love what you're saying, because a few things have come up for me over the last 12 months, I think. And one is that I had created a 3 principles police in my head. So I was watching myself all the time. Am I using the right language? Am I, that kind of thing. So that's fallen away. So actually the stuff with the parenting teenagers, I don't even know if I mentioned the 3 principles in the adverts. And that feels so freeing, because I hadn't realized how I was limiting myself. And the other thing is, like the Sarah video, I think what we do is we create something, we put it out there, and that's it. But I mean, you've just reminded me, I loved that video. I'd forgotten about it. I'd love to see it again and again. Sometimes just pop it out every 6 months or 12 months. Recently, my son did a video, and he put it on his Facebook page. Lots of people really liked it, and then it was kind of sit back and wait for people to contact him and say, I'd like some coaching. And it's like, well, it kind of doesn't work like that. We need to keep at it, and it's something he loves doing. So he's going to, he needs to be doing more, and he's just kind of did more yesterday. But him and I were talking, it's, oh yeah, you just need to keep doing it so that people keep seeing you. So just one more thing I was thinking, I don't know, Julian, but I get the impression that you and I might be a little bit similar, that in that don't want to join the gang. And I think that was one of the issues with me, was I felt like I should be part of I like collaborating, but I felt like I should be part of a group. But by doing that, I was losing a bit of me. So Nick and I talked about that on Monday. It's like, who is Mandy Spray? And I didn't know who I was. And I was saying, I think I said to you that I want to do amazing stuff. And you're like, but you are doing amazing stuff. And like you were saying, Julian, I couldn't see it because it was on the end of my nose. So actually, I don't know what I'm talking about really, but I think it is working together, but not feeling fixed. That makes sense. So I'd love to share Sarah's video again. So sometimes it's like send it to somebody and say, can you share this for me? If you like it, feel free to share it, rather than just putting it out there and waiting.
No, it was also interesting. So it was also interesting that I noticed that I've been invited to, somebody created a Facebook Messenger group with a bunch of people and then said, the reason why I've created this is because if we all share this stuff, then it will get out more in Facebook, kind of thing. And so again, that's a kind of marketing tactic, and where you're trying to kind of manipulate in a way the way that Facebook works. And I suppose part of me is like when I make that 1 million view film, it will just be, like I had another one. I did one with Philip Bartu, July time. And that had 20 something shares without asking anybody to share it. So sometimes you hit. I mean, maybe it's the fact that Facebook algorithms, the way they work, they show you, when they start seeing it working, they show you to more people. I don't know. Or maybe it's that you've been quiet on Facebook, and then when you come on, it doesn't show you to many people because you've been too quiet for a while. I'm not quite sure, but I also don't know that it feels very. Maybe I've got some thought police thing going on there, Mandy, because I feel like if I wrote to you and said, you're now part of this group, and I'm going to publish 6 videos in the next month, I'd love you to share them for me. That doesn't feel very congruent. to me.
No, it's so funny, because if it was, and I can feel the difference, if it was you as a friend, then it's like, oh yeah, I'd love to help. If it was you as trying to get me to help you with your marketing, it would feel different.
Yeah. But
it's such a subtle thing.
So here's the thing, let me change that again. So something that came to me yesterday, and by the way, thank you everybody, I've got something for my brand strategy of 2019, which is to re-release some of my old films. That's brilliant.
And also just to say is that it might be worth looking at who might be interested with a wider reach. So any of the kind of bigger wellbeing brands who might want to share it, you can send it to them as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I haven't been there. I'm not sure. Maybe that's worth a conversation, Nicole, and we can see how maybe we could do that.
Yeah.
But the other thing that came to me is this kind of like yesterday, and this is. First of all, let me apologise to Lesley, because you haven't been able to get a word in edgeways.
That's fine. Listening's good for me.
It's working for you.
I'm practicing my listening.
So yesterday, I mean, it's been with me for a while that I think that the margins of society in Britain are getting, I don't know what the right words, closer, narrower, wider. There are more people in difficult living circumstances now than I can ever remember. I mean, I know they all say the stats are getting better all the time, but just when I go about the streets of York, etc., I see more homeless people, for example. And I went to Sheffield last summer for the film festival. Homeless people walking past, routinely walking past homeless people, and I don't ever remember it being that bad. And I was in York yesterday, and it was steadily raining all day, and there was a guy out in a wheelchair, and he was trying to smoke a fag, and some people had bought him some food, but the food had got soggy, and you know, it was all of that. And I just get a sense that we as a society have lost our way a bit. You know, how can we be allowing all that to happen? Why can't we be helping these people more? It's all very well and good that there's a system for it, but the system has been cut and cut and cut. So, you know, what was it? There's that, lovely, what's his name? There's that guy on Facebook who makes these ranty videos and that everybody likes, satire.
Yeah.
Talking about homeless. Anyway, so it came to me that I'd love to make a film about the homeless, about kind of make that more visible, you know.
Yeah.
And with the kind of question, like Sid Banks to me was all about love and understanding. It was all about kindness. It was all about, that's what it's really about. It's not about mind consciousness. No, I might have that wrong. It's just the way it seems to me right now. And so I want to make and I thought, well, maybe I could make a series of films about that. And then I went to have some lunch, and one of the girls serving there, turns out that her birthday's on the 14th of January, and with her birthday money, she goes out and gives the homeless clothes and food and stuff. So I thought, right, there's the film right there.
Yeah.
Now, if I made that film, I bet you'd be far more likely to want to publish it than me going, Mandy, I've got this great film. I'd love you to share. Now, I might do that anyway. I might do that because I feel like this film is bigger than me, and it needs to get out there. We need to make that call to our society to make some change, to listen to common sense, to listen to who they really are.
And then would you be sharing the 3 principles wisdom with that as well?
I think it's not explicitly. I think it shares itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think if we go back to who we really are, human nature.
Not as the 3 principles, but within it, yeah.
Human nature, I think, is to be kind, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I've got that wrong.
No, absolutely.
No, it is. Yes, I mean, I love what you've just been talking about, and I think it's reminded me that I don't ask for help, not even help. I don't ask for support, whatever word we want to call it, nearly as much as I could. And often people are offering me support, and it's like, no, I'm fine, thanks. And so that's what's just reminded me, maybe that's part of my, because I talk a lot about supporting people, I'm much more comfortable making the tea than I am mingling, if that makes sense, at a party, for instance. So, and I know that's part of me, is actually just ask. Do you mind sharing this? If I think it's useful, if it's wisdom coming through me, it's not about me. I've got to get myself out of the way. So if I've got a message, whether it's a blog or something, I then start worrying about personal me. What are people going to think? Where's it going to go? Will enough people see it? And it's like, it's not up to me. It is like love and understanding coming through me. So actually it makes sense to ask you guys, if you like this, feel free to share.
Yeah. And I do feel like the world would be interested in that story as well.
Yeah.
I had another one where I think the 3 Principles community is really useful. I've got a invitation to tender with a particular charity. It's absolutely perfect for me. Now, who knows whether I'll win it or not? You know, these things are, you know, you never know how they're decided. But I just reached out to some people I knew in the 3 Principles community who deal with those kinds of organisations, and said, would you have a read of my proposal and help me, you know, craft it, And so they both came back with fantastic feedback, which I've incorporated into so it's helped me make my proposal much, much better. So
there you go.
I think that's something that that's something really positive. And maybe that is another tactic. I don't know, but and it fits with Mandy, with your reaching out for help thing. You know, if you know somebody who is a great mingler and can do some mingling with you for you, then go ask them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't see that as kind of asking for help. I see it as working collaboratively in partnership with people.
It just, for me, when you're on the right track, it just comes naturally. Like, I think about making a film about the homeless, and in half an hour I've met somebody who's doing something, going to be doing something for the homeless, you know. Now, whether this all comes about in that way, I don't know, but it's like, oh, there's a nice door opening, you just have to step through it. And it's the same with, you know, I'm writing this proposal, and all of a sudden I go, oh yeah, this person could, I should ask them. And if they haven't got the time to do it, then no bother. But they all came back very quickly and gave me great feedback. So again, you kind of go, oh yeah, that's an opening door, that's brilliant. So to me, it felt, that's how it, you know, back to the ebb and flow of it all. That's how it seems to. And there's no real, you know, I could go, okay, so I've got my 2019 strategy now is re-releasing some of my films. And by the way, I ought to do some of that on LinkedIn, because I have no presence on LinkedIn, and it's a much more open platform than Facebook, for example. And then I talked to you about these kind of social issues. So out of the homeless thing, I then got in touch with Sarah, and who's you know, her background is big into young people with learning difficulties, etc. And so I said, well, and she's often a campaigner for their cause. So I said to her, well, why do you fancy doing something on that kind of social issue? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. So now I've got potentially 2 films. So that, for me now, means I need to make a kind of Kickstarter, because I've got no money to do any of this. I've got to make a Kickstarter for people to see if I can get some people to put some money in the pot to help me make more of those. Because I'd love, not 2019, to make 4 or 6, you know, films about social issues, about bringing us back to who we really are.
So I would see much of that as tactics, but the wider wanting to make social films as your strategy.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
So no, I've called myself a social filmmaker. God knows what it means.
Yeah.
I'm finding out.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking, Nick and I went to a talk last week at the British Library, and it was called Turning Purpose into, Passion into Pounds or something. But forget the title. There were some amazing, strong entrepreneurial women, one of whom was a film director, whose name escapes me. And one of the things that I loved about it is they got people to stand up and say, I'd like to offer this, and I would like this. And it was really difficult to get started. But there were some amazing offers going around the table, weren't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think it's also, for me, this is not about thinking what I should be doing. It's more, I work better when I'm reflecting on a question. So, for instance, I was disturbed and upset about the number of teenage suicides. And it was like, how can I help with this? What can I do? What's my role in this? And eventually, after some reflection, it's thought, work with parents of teenagers. That's what I've started doing. I knew that I wasn't going to be working with, or unlikely to be working with, the teenagers, or going out into organisations that seemed quite outside in for me. I couldn't see where I was going to fit, if that makes sense. So reflecting on, where is this coming from? Letting that sort of passion and upset show up, really. And then from that came a strategy. An idea, if we call a strategy, an idea of what I wanted to do, and then how I was going to do it. And that will be fluid. At the moment, it's webinar series for parents of teenagers. And interestingly, I've got people from all over the world getting involved, not very many, but parents are really wanting to do the best by their teenagers. And I'm a parent of teenagers, although they're grown up now. So it just fitted with who I am, and it fitted with love and understanding. Which is what you were saying, Julian. It fitted with the fact I don't want to demonize teenagers. I don't want to sit and laugh at them. I don't want to do all that stuff. That upsets me. It's okay to do it your way, which is celebrating teenagers and understanding teenagers and helping the parents to feel that love and understanding that they've kind of hidden. So it really did come from, so it just did itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But with some checking out with people, do you think this is a good idea? Do you think people might be interested? So when I felt a bit insecure, I'd either reflect a bit more, or I'd just chat to somebody, reach out to somebody, not go and pay £1 million for coaching. It's just, you've got it in you. I mean, Lesley, I don't know what you're thinking from this, but we all see Lesley. I've got my views on Lesley. I wonder what you think you've got to offer.
Well, there's the question.
Yeah.
It's funny because this came up because I was on my I'm doing the Ian Watson course at the moment, and last weekend that was one of the things that really sort of, sometimes where you just get that sort of feeling and like, oh, that's what I need to look at. And it is about telling my story and about being okay with that and being enough. And what I've relied on in the past unsuccessfully is relying on people to give me like who I am, in as much as that I've always asking for feedback and sort of, how do you think I did, or is there anything I could do better, and all that, and not accepting that I was perfect in the moment based on sort of how I was thinking in the moment. So that's a biggie for me, and I sort of resonate a lot with what you're saying, sort of, Mandy, about like I'm the team maker. I'm not the person that's out there on the stage, although sometimes I am, and sometimes I really enjoy that. But the who I am is that person that just gets things done. And so sort of now, sort of trying to start my coaching business and sort of getting that off the ground. Interestingly, I've got less of the insecurity that I used to have about that, and trust that it will happen. But as I say, there's still a lot, and I think this is what I was saying to you, Nicole, about the finding my voice.
Yeah.
To be able to say it rather than rely on feedback from other people. So it's and isn't it interesting that we sort of start talking about branding and we still end up really talking about sort of the underlying insecurities and all the things that stop us, and it is only ever our thinking.
Yeah. And that's quite common with branding, is that I think people, it's just asking those questions like, who are you, and what are you wanting to share with the world? And it does often throw up kind of insecurities. And that's why it's nice to kind of point people back to, you know, you it's not even about finding your voice, it's just letting it come out, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and knowing that you've got one, and it's unique, and I think that the principles for me became yet another tool without me realizing it. And even when I was telling everyone it's not a tool or a technique, I was using it as that, thinking I want to share the principles. And it's like, oh, I forgot again. It's actually life's living through me, showing up as through Mandy. So whatever way I do it has to be okay. Not has to be okay. It's hard putting it into language, but just be who you are.
It is okay. Yeah. No, I've been caught up in a discussion about what's ego and what's beyond ego, you know, true me or whatever it is. And at the end of the day, whether you act out of ego or act out of something else, you're still acting out. There's still, however life is working. So it might be one's a longer route than the other, or has different twists and turns, but it's all getting you there, wherever there is.
Yeah.
And so I would like to come back to, actually, I think this has been really, really useful, because I've now come up with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points strategy for 2019, right?
Excellent, exactly.
Which is, you know, re-releases, social issues films. I'm doing this thing on self-filming because I'm doing an online product on self-filming because I think if we can get people looking better on camera, feeling more comfortable on camera, sharing what they want to share on camera, then we collectively will get this understanding out there more. So that I think I can help by doing that. It's interesting that Joe Mundy's doing the same thing at the moment, but I don't know. It's just came to me because not a lot of people commission me to film them, which is a shame. But I can fill in that gap by helping them film themselves, which is a cheaper thing, and I guess in the long term is a better option, or really is good. So there's that, and then there'll be commissions from filming people, I hope, and then the documentary, bigger documentary that I want to produce, which seems to be taking years, but hey, we'll see what happens. And then you sit back and you go, well, that's 5 things. That's a lot of work. That feels like a year's worth of work before I've even started.
Yeah.
But there's room for I put the 6th item is a question mark, because I know that if I stay open to it, life will throw me some other opportunity to go do. Yeah. And I don't know what that is. In fact, in a way, all of this stuff on this list that I know how to do might be not it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what you were talking about right at the start, about make it a dream. Yeah. And see if it how much of it actually comes, because I could in my past, before the principles, I'd go, right, this is my 6-point plan, now we've got to execute on that, that's what 2019 is about, and off we go. And then it
becomes a chore. Yeah, it becomes a chore then, whereas actually if you just see that it can be fun and just play with it and see what lands and what doesn't, and it doesn't matter, because you wrote the strategy, right? So
in a way, the strategy is writing itself, because at least 4 of those, 5 of the items, I didn't ever sit down and with somebody go, right, what's our strategy for they're just things that have popped into my consciousness, and I've gone, oh yeah, that would be really nice to do. Really important.
Can I just share one thing that's just popped into my head, Julian? Is that I had a filming experience sort of it's probably nearly 20 years ago, which was well, even now just thinking about it, it just gives me goosebumps. Anyway, but I was just wondering whether there's an opportunity to do something similar as Nicole and Mandy have done today, as like a taster for that self-filming, because I'm definitely somebody that needs a very small toe in the water to just sort of start feeling even comfortable saying the words. And I'd really be up for that. So you can put me on a list if you ever sort of get to do that.
I would love to do like a retreat for entrepreneurs, which like helps them to kind of do all of that, like combining the branding, the filming, and the 3 principles. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
One of the things down the line, once I've got the self-filming thing, I think that I was thinking of having kind of like a Michael Neal style action day where you'd come along with your gear and you'd leave with some content, having been supported and coached and so on, as necessary during the session. So that could easily build into your then people come to your retreat and they go away with plans and media, and it's a real it creates some stuff. It's not just we'll sit here, we'll chat about it, we'll feel comfortable, and then you can go away do it. It's a kind of, while you're feeling comfortable, let's do it.
Yeah, creativity, that would be really fun.
And it's all to do, the authentic you. You come along not really knowing who you are, because that's the trouble with a lot of us. We're not really sure. And by the end of it, you've got some product, and it could be a piece of writing or a bit of film, or who knows. Yeah, I'm just aware it's 11 o'clock, believe it or not. So
it is.
I don't know if you want to just carry on. I mean, I'm cool too if you want to.
I don't mind. Yeah.
What do people want to do?
I've got time.
Yeah, perfect. Because I do think it's useful to have someone reflect back to you. Because when I was with you, Nick, on Monday, I would say things and you'd reflect that back, and it's a bit like kind of, is that true? We were saying a bit Byron Katie, but you weren't doing that. It was just, I don't see it like that. So I think it is quite useful to have someone reflect back to you the language that you're using.
It was funny. One of my clients kind of came to me and was like, right, I really want to focus on, I'm a personal trainer, I want to focus on getting my message out there, to people, to the general public, about personal training just in this one area. And as the strategy evolved, it turned out he had this great philosophy about it was like a 4-point plan for spiritual, mental, physical well-being, and he wanted to share it with the corporate world, but he wasn't doing any of it because he thought that he couldn't, and he thought he wasn't capable. And it's funny what evolves out of just asking questions.
And I think sometimes we can be a bit kind of nebulous, really, that I want to share the 3 principles with people, and it's like, that's kind of, if that's our goal, it's like, well, who are they? So for me, there is a bit of needing some clarity about who I want to share this with, but also staying in touch with who I really am. So it's a bit of an interplay between formless and form. It's constantly moving between the two. It's not denying either of them. And that's useful, I think.
It's looking at who you're trying to share it with, because I guess even when I first started sharing the principles, it was like I wanted to just share it with everybody, but actually by doing that, you're almost not managing to reach anyone. So if you actually look at who your message will resonate with, so for me, like a female audience, for example, although actually it does resonate with some men, but it's just kind of being more, I guess it's having more of a conscious awareness of who you're trying to share with, and that then helps you to be able to speak to them in a consistent way, but using your own authentic voice.
But this is sharing the principles, isn't it? We haven't labelled it sharing the principles,
exactly.
But this is you doing your thing, Nick, which happens to be, through helping people with their branding. But it's not saying that the principles are a separate thing. I'm going to go and teach yoga. That's different, because you do need to have the skills of yoga. But this is different. It's just I want to share, full stop. As soon as we add the principles, we make it a thing.
Yeah, we do. And again, I think it's a label for the principles that doesn't really necessarily speak to people, because what does it mean?
Yeah.
It's just life.
Yeah. Yes, it's more about the how, I suppose, isn't it? Like with me, it's writing. running workshops, doing one-to-one. So I know how I want to do it, how I know what I want to spend my time doing, the things that I love doing. And that came out in the strategy day on Monday. And that helped me to focus on, yes, I love writing and sharing my writing. Yes, I love facilitating groups. I love facilitating webinars. So do more of that, do more of what you love, rather than thinking I need to do something different.
Yeah.
And it's not even do more of what you're good at, because I found some of the things that I'm good at, I don't actually want to do at the moment.
Yeah.
So I can let them go. And that was a bit weird. That's where the shoulds came in. Well, you should be doing that, really.
And that's often where people start with marketing, is the shoulds and the tactics.
Is it?
It's like, oh, I should be doing social media, so let's do that. Or I should have a website, or I should have, whatever. And sometimes it doesn't even work for them, because sometimes their audience who they want to speak to isn't even on social media, like I said earlier. It's letting go of those shoulds and doing what you love, I guess, what feels right.
Yeah. Something came to me then about the sort of, sit at home and write your strategy, or go out into the world and just meet people and see what comes from that. We call it networking. And then that becomes a bad word. Or I've got to go and join a networking group. Well, networking is just what we're doing now, isn't it? We're doing it all the time.
It's connection.
That's your word, isn't it?
It's for me, branding is being connected to your message and what you love. And I guess it's connection. It's connecting with branding. I don't know if that makes any sense. It did to me.
Yeah, it does. And there's something about, who do I feel most connected with? Well, it's not even that, because that's boxing it, actually. Because I'm looking at my target audience of women of my sort of age and my sort of life situation, but there's some women who I'd hate to work with. I don't get a good feeling from them at all. So again, it's not pigeonholing it, it's actually just following that feeling.
Yeah. And speaking to the ones that you do want to work with and do like.
Absolutely. And that's one of it's feeling pushy. It's actually sometimes waiting for them to find me, kind of, tented. And it's just ridiculous, tented. And that's when it becomes personal, not handing out business cards, because that feels pushy or whatever. It's like, oh God, it's not all about me. This is about a message. And if we can get, when the personal thinking falls away, even if it's just for a moment, magic shows up. Really does.
So one thing you could do is ask for business cards rather than give them out.
Yeah. Yeah, I do that too. And that feels a kindness as well. It feels like there's a different feeling with that. Yeah. No, good point.
There's a couple of things that strike me there. I mean, back in the day when I first started, this is before Stars of Wellbeing, but started consulting, I used to go to do all that business development and networking and breakfast meetings, and I found it terribly hard work and hated it. And of course, when you show up in that way, how likely are you going to get business if people, that's how you respond or in that space. But then when I started filming, I'll just have an enthusiastic conversation with people about filming, because that's what I love doing.
Yeah.
And if it turns out that they're interested too, then that's brilliant. And if it doesn't turn out that way, then I just had an interesting conversation with somebody, and it doesn't feel like networking, etc. No. And then the other side to that is there's kind of, I don't know if anybody remembers Boys from the Black stuff. This is an 80s thing. But there's a guy called Yozza Hughes who was in terribly difficult circumstances, and he would go everywhere and he'd spot somebody doing something and he'd say, I could do that job, give us that job. And then he'd end up getting really frustrated and, headbutting them and stuff like that, because he just so wanted that. there's lots of times when I see that, you know, I feel like yesterday I was at this suicide prevention, and I collared the guy who's the public health lead and said, have you thought about making any films? And he's like, no, no, no. I said, here's my card, I'll be in touch in 6 weeks, kind of thing. Now, to me, that could have been a Yozza Hughes moment, and it could be that he goes, oh, this guy, I'm not, you know, it's not on my radar, but it could also be that there is a good film to make there, and it feels like, to me, it feels like the message is bigger. You know, suicide probably is one of these social subjects that I should be doing a film on next year, because suicide is, you know, like, you know, a great place where suicidal thinking doesn't mean that you're suicidal. That's what the principles would say.
Yeah.
You could have suicidal thinking for the rest of your life and not commit suicide.
Yeah.
Mm.
If people knew that's possible for them.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
One corporate that may be interested in that film, Julian, is British Rail.
All right.
I know that sort of locally, they've given a huge amount of money to a local suicide prevention organisation, because it costs them millions and millions of pounds a year.
Yeah.
So that's a possible avenue.
Yeah.
I wonder how I'd even find the right person to talk to. That's a really interesting suggestion.
I could probably find that out.
That would be fantastic, Lesley.
If I can, yeah.
Because I can remember myself travelling from. I spent a few years travelling into central London, and it would either be that a lorry had hit a bridge and they had to stop to collect the bridge, and that completely stopped the whole train network.
Yeah.
Or, and this was quite often a Monday morning or a Friday afternoon thing, somebody had walked in front of a train somewhere, and again they had to deal with all of the, and I suppose at the time I would think about, you know, wow, I don't mind having a couple of hours delay, but such a shame that somebody felt the need to do that thing. And so if you could find, that would be brilliant.
I've had that today, because the figure that was given to me was that every time somebody does that, it's £1 million it costs British Rail.
Yeah. I mean, I was involved. I missed a day's filming actually in London the other week when the engineering works on the Sunday overran, and basically the whole of South West network was completely stopped for the whole Monday. I mean, that must cost Network Rail $1 million, but think of all the other businesses that people can't get from there. It could have cost me some money, but I mean, if I cost my time, sort of thing. So
There's a lady, I don't know if you know Sue Quigley, do you, Julian? So her husband became a train driver, which was his lifelong dream, about 2 years ago. So now she might be worth getting in touch with as well. Because there's the other angle on the effect it's having on the drivers, not only that have witnessed it.
Sorry.
Yeah, but also the fear now as people are driving, so the stress amongst so there's a lot in there that they might well be interested in. But also, can I just say, Julian, when I joined that charity as a trustee, what you said was, let me know if I can help in any way. And if you'd said, oh, can I come and do, I could do some filming, I'm a filmmaker, I could do some filming, I would have had a different reaction. So sometimes it's saying, look, I'm really passionate about this. Is there any way I can help? I am a filmmaker, rather than, do you know what I mean? Going in as I'm the filmmaker.
I've assumed that you know.
Obviously, yeah, but you don't even, you want people to think that you're offering help. I think I'm talking to myself here as well now, rather than saying, oh, I'm a coach, would you like some help? It's like, I'd love to help out here. If it's authentic, I can hear the authenticity in you. You want to help out.
Yeah.
And the way you can help out is through filmmaking.
Yeah.
And telling people about your connection to filmmaking, I guess, comes back to connection.
Yeah. Yeah, not hiding behind it sometimes. It's almost like, who am I? Oh, I'm a filmmaker. Or who am I? I'm a coach. Or who am I? I'm a social worker. It's not, I'm Mandy. And then, yeah.
Well, I think in terms of what I would understand branding to be, that calling myself a social filmmaker, and it's about, which means to me, making positive, showcasing positive social change, or the opportunities for positive social change through the medium of film. That's what it means to me.
Yeah.
So I don't do corporate. I mean, I ought to do corporate films because they have much bigger budgets and all the rest of it. But they're just some part of some marketing strategy.
But can you offer the social films to corporates?
I hadn't thought about. I mean, that's what Lesley's suggesting is
or them funding it.
Yeah, that's what
some of these big corporates, but also some of the big corporates that aren't involved in that necessarily. They love to do that. What's it? Social? What do they call it? Where they give money, basically. Well, social corporate responsibility.
Yeah, nowadays they are to be ISO 9000 and whatever it is. You have to have some environmental and social strategy, don't you?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And what about charities as well? Do you work with any charities to create films?
Definitely. That's. But actually, there's an education thing to do there, because often charities have never thought about making themselves the visible, or the need to make themselves visible. I mean, where I have been, where films are useful at the moment, and they see the value of them, is in demonstrating qualitatively the value of the services being provided by the charity, so that they can use that in funding situations. Because yes, people want the data. Our service improves from this score to this score, but if you show them the film with some service users, who've really had a really positive experience, that's the thing that really carries weight. So that's where I've been successful with charities, and this response to tender I'm doing now is for a charity. So I hope to do more of that in as time goes on.
Yeah. There's something about the Electric Umbrella, the people I'm involved in, which I love, and that's what their aim isn't to give people with learning disabilities a good time. It's to change perception of learning disabilities. And it's just so they turn down hundreds of gigs all the time, because they're thinking, actually this isn't going to make much difference to perception. So then I was thinking about the homeless thing. It's about changing people's perception to homelessness. Would be so useful. Do you know what I mean? It's just doing it slightly differently, because I think people are what do they call it? They're sort of flooded with fatigued. Yeah. Flooded with images of awful stuff and just switch off. Whereas there's something different in here. I mean, we're beginning to see it a little bit more about sort of celebrating people's uniqueness. And the guy with the cat called Bob, that book sold millions. So again, it was a slightly different perception, but it's kind of doing it differently. I think that's maybe what the principles will help with.
Do you do any work for TV, Julian? Or have you ever?
No, not at the moment, no.
Do you pitch ideas?
Sorry?
Do you ever pitch ideas to them, or?
Yeah. Well, the documentary's about that, and that's quite a long, slow burn at the moment. So, because it is, and I'm not sure whether I would, because mental health is a big issue, and I pitched to Channel 4 on doing something on mental health and diversity. So looking at diversity to them means outside London, basically. But which is fine, because our northeast, projects would be perfect for that. But in a way, you have to make a film to show them, and then they'll consider making a film, if you see what I mean. So I haven't really got. I'm stumbling at the first hurdle, which is to raise the funding to make the first film. To get but there is a way. I've just spotted a way forward. It's just taking a lot longer than I thought. And interestingly, Channel 4 are moving up to Leeds. Their headquarters up to Leeds. So there's maybe more opportunity coming there. Yeah.
I think there's something in what you were saying there, Julian, that that kind of made sense. That with branding, we're looking at, often we get caught up in what the finished product is going to look like.
Yeah.
And what we want is a sample, and then from that stuff grows. Because I was thinking, I met with some children's book publishers last week, and they go to the book fairs that they go to is not with finished products. It's a mock-up of what the book might look like with maybe 1 or 2 pages. So they're just showing this is the potential, this is what it might look like. And I
Even
think
just pitching the dream, really, pitching the idea.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be afraid to do that.
That's what what TV, if you pitch to a TV, they basically want to see a sample of what. So you are pitching the feel of it and the style of it, even if it's not a completely formed.
But I think I'm talking about us as like Lesley wanting to be a coach. I'm talking about that as well. But we look at the finished article, and in our heads we have what we think a coach looks like, and I'll need this and this and this, and then we get overwhelmed by it. But it's actually just, if we just do a little bit of coaching, was it Steve Chandler again, serve, don't sell, whatever, just hone your craft. I don't know how much coaching I've done, and I can look at it as how much coaching I've done for free, or I can look at it how much practice I've had. It's just changing the wording slightly. How much amazing experience I've had. It happens that I didn't charge for it. But it's, I suppose for me, I think it is baby steps quite often, isn't it? But yeah, like you were saying, the wider picture, the big blue sky thinking, and loving that, and then just going back to, right, what do I do now? What's next step now? And I think the other thing that came from the branding day was we did that, filled a whole page with words that were important to me, and then you came back with your 4 pillars. I don't know if you want to explain that, because I found that really helpful.
So what, as part of the brand strategy, we basically look at kind of all the words that you feel represent your brand, and then you kind of end up selecting 4, which are kind of your main, the four words that sum up your brand basically. And by knowing what those are, your message is then consistent. So everything that you put out must kind of, those four brand keywords help you to keep in mind what you're trying to do, I guess, if that makes sense.
I kind of did that I have a film called 3 H's, which is 3 H's are hope, humanity, and humour. I don't tend to do the humour thing very much though, because I'm quite a serious kind of person for some strange reason. But humanity and hope are definitely things that are in as much as I can possibly make them in everything I do.
That.
Yeah.
I love that.
I've just had this memory that just about, I don't know, 5 years ago, my mum came up to London, and we were walking through Waterloo, loads of us, and suddenly we noticed Mum wasn't there. So kind of backtrack, and she was talking to this homeless guy under one of the bridges. So I went over and I said, "You all right, Mum?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm just telling him some Devon jokes," because he's from Devon. And this guy was creased up laughing. And she wasn't doing it because she thought she should, or because as she walked past, she just said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "I'm from Devon." So, "Oh my God, I am." And they just started sharing jokes. But it wasn't a serious kind of, I need to help the homeless, or I need to talk to this guy. It just reminded me, I completely forgot about that. It was just humour. Did more good for him than probably £1 million would have. So connection through humour, and that's Sarah's brilliant at that. Sarah, the mutual friend that we've got from York. Biggest heart you could come across.
If you could have filmed that in a moment, then that would have made a great demo.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think a lot of the time when we come up with these ideas of what we want to do, we end up thinking about them in such a way that we feel like they have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like we have all these dreams and we're like, great, that's great, and then we think that we can't do them because they're not going to be exactly how we want them to be. But actually, if we just play in the moment with it, and see if we can just create anything, like a prototype or whatever.
Yeah.
Just playing with it, it can't be wrong.
No. It's, yeah, got me thinking now.
I think that's part of the not making it a solid plan, you know, allowing it room to develop in all kinds of directions and seeing being curious about where that leads, rather than, you know, I must have 4 films out by October 2019. You know, it's that's potential for frustration and hard work.
Yeah. And I think noticing what you're already doing, because when I started talking about, I want to work with parents of teenagers, and I saw that as a goal, I realised that actually I was already in conversation with parents of teenagers.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't realise that. It's like, I want to be a coach. Well, you're already doing that, whatever that is, in your way. But we're so busy looking over there that we don't see, similar to what you were saying, Julian, about what's in front of your nose. You're already doing it, because that's who we are.
I think it's a big insight that I've had, is that often, you know, I'm still thinking about making a decision about doing stuff, and then when I look at what I've actually been doing, I've started a while back. You know, like, okay, so the decision's already made.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I love today. It's been really helpful, pretty productive. I mean, I've now I came in with 1 film, social issue, that I wanted to do, and I've got 3 now.
Yeah.
I only wanted 4 to 6, so that's it. Now, who knows whether those are the 3? I don't know, but
yeah, I was just thinking, because I did some work with Complementary Support Teams UK, who set up to offering free complementary therapies to survivors of Grenfell. Something like that would have been great to, you know, and you could have got some good traction with stuff like that.
I was around. There was something early. There's an interesting story there, actually. I was around something. Youth violence was a really big issue, April, May time. There was some big news article about how London had jumped in ahead of New York as the most knife crime. And it was like, yeah, but it's just 1 quarter. You know, we had a spike in the UK and they had a slightly dip, and so therefore we got ahead of. But anyway, it did prompt a lot of action, including what's his name, the Mayor of London,
Sadiq.
Sadiq
Khan.
Yeah. Making sure that everybody ran a knife awareness day in schools before the end of the summer term, etc. And so there was a lot of action taken, and I went to an event that was kind of meant to be about that, but didn't actually go anywhere. It was kind of, oh, okay. And then, but at that event, I met a lot of people that had been involved with Grenfell, but they were all in that. Oh no, we can't publicise it. Oh no, you know, because of the, you know, the investigations and we're not allowed to say anything, and I'd have to get my organisation to. So I did kind of tip into that world, and just to find the door closed, basically, for me.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And that's the way it goes sometimes. I mean, you know, Lesley might introduce me to somebody at BR, and I might say no. You know, there might not be any interest, or we might not even get to somebody in BR. But then to Quiley's husband could be quite an interesting, because that's when you were saying a unique angle on it, Mandy, that is a fantastically unique angle of, like, I'm driving around and, you know, I know guys who've had this happen to them. And it's
ruined their lives. Yeah.
So I think that would be a unique angle on it, definitely.
Yeah.
And do you ever, just an idea, do you do much with press? Do you ever tell press about your films and things?
No.
Because I think that could be really useful for you. Yeah.
I think once we start doing, I mean, a lot of the stuff I do that I like is for, at the moment, is for, well, it's either for coaches or it's for charities and organisations, and so the stuff that I do becomes their film, not my film, if that makes sense. So So PRing it is not necessary. But if I was to do these social films, for example, I believe there'll be my films, and there will be something that I would be interested in PRing. You know?
Yeah, and I think even just telling your story and what you're trying to do with your brand could be good for you. You know, to press. You know, you're creating these amazing social films. I think press would be.
Well, maybe you can have the conversation with me about that at the appropriate point, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Guys, it's now past.
Oh,
and I do need to go.
Yeah.
Any final bits, or we could maybe, Nick, we could let you know maybe via Facebook page if there's anything, stuff that's come from this, whether you know there's more to be talked about, or more to pick your brains from. Because I know one of the things you're thinking of doing is setting up like maybe four, I'll come up with 4, but videos about branding strategy that I think would be really useful.
Maybe more webinars, or yeah.
Okay.